Well, today we're here to re-sign the Fort Meade Community Covenant Council declaration, which is a partnership basically between all the interested parties here to help support Fort Meade, and we're here today to really celebrate that support and a lot of the efforts that we've accomplished over the last 3 years since the covenant's been signed.
And we always say this, but Fort Meade is just always growing and changing. And 20 years ago, we were talking about it was a cut through to Laurel, and now it's really,
Right.
a huge part of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was here when it was at cut through to Laurel, but it really has changed. I mean, obviously with the Defense Information School, defense media activity, and the agencies that came with BRAC, NSA is still, our largest tenant organization. But the biggest change, U.S. Cyber Command, getting that 4-star, and really, as Colonel Foley likes to describe it, the 21st century domain for conflict and competition is going to be waged here at Fort Meade. And with that has just brought a lot of energy around the post, a lot of support. Our community was here even before then to support us, but just bringing a cyber command just continued that process and has just made people want to do more. So that's why events like this are so great, to show that support, show our appreciation for the community we have, because we couldn't do what we do without community support.
Tell me about, there's a lot of cranes, a lot of bulldozers around. We can see the work going on in 175. We can see right across the street here. A lot of this housing behind us wasn't here, 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about some of the growth that's going on the post.
Well, we do have a lot. We just finished a new PX. Behind us, as you were mentioning, that is our new privatized lodging. So we're tearing down some of the old buildings and we're replacing it with this new privatized lodging to help increase the quality of life for service members who come here and stay, to increase their, just the quality of their stay here at Fort Meade. Today we're at Reese Crossings, which is a privatized initiative only at Fort Meade, basically junior enlisted single housing. So it basically gives us the ability that, with our barracks being almost at full capacity, this initiative really allows us to let our senior or more mature younger service members move into an apartment-like complex with our partners Corvius, to increase their quality of life, and that it also keeps them on the campus so they don't have to drive through secure perimeters to get to work. Obviously, what's happening at our cyber campus, about $1.5 billion worth of construction going on. That's the main muscle move. Everybody wanted to talk about BRAC. BRAC took up about 9 holes of our golf course. Our transformation is taking up the other 27, just to give you an idea of how much construction that's taking. So between that, Route 175, that is probably the single biggest example of what the Covenant has done. We don't ask for external transportation funds. We can't. Colonel Foley's job is to handle inside the installation. But from the county, and obviously for us and our workforce, handling 175 was our top external transportation priority. So we brought in folks with the Covenant. They came in, and on the Covenant we have representatives from the county, we have representatives from the state, we have congressional representation. They all work together, push the issues forward, push the needs forward. We get a Tiger grant for $10 million, and then right after that, the state announces the funding for the rest of 175, so we're going to be getting that taken care of. And that's just a win-win for everybody, and a perfect example of what the power of the Community Covenant Council is.
And you can finally see it. The
Yeah.
bulldozers are there. Give me your usual rundown on the vital statistics of the post. How many people are here, and sort of some of the basic facts about the Fort Meade.
Okay, approximately 52,000 service members. Not service members, 52,000 employees. That makes us the 3rd largest Army installation. With that, only about 12,000 service members. So we have a very large civilian and contractor population. We're joint service. As Colonel Foley likes to say, we're the most non-joint installation, because we have about 4,000 soldiers, but we have the same number of Marines, Air Force. We also have, or Navy and Air Force. We also have Coast Guardsmen and Marines here as well. have approximately 2,600 homes and about 12,000 people living on the installation. And, we're just basically a regular town. We have a movie theater. We
Probably
have
the third largest town in Anne Arundel County, I would guess.
Well,
Right
yeah, I
around there.
mean, we're right around there. We're right around there, and we really do appreciate the partnership we have with the county, and we take a lot of pride that Fort Meade is in Anne Arundel County. So that's huge.
So the purpose of this event is just to reaffirm the community's dedication and support towards Fort George Meade as a key military installation in the state of Maryland, but also for our entire nation. And the state of Maryland understands the importance of Fort Meade. Everything that's going on here towards the defense of our nation in cyberspace, this newest domain of human conflict and competition in the 21st century, and everything that goes on here. There are 117 Department of Defense organizations and units that make their home on Fort Meade every day, and every single one of them plays a huge, vital role towards our national security. So very, very important place, and the state of Maryland understands that.
And so I think it's been 3 years now that you've been commanding here.
Just about 2 years,
2
coming
years?
up on the 2-year point. Yeah, I took over in August of 2013, and so fortunate.
How you like the job?
Absolutely love the job every day, and I did. I lucked out and got a 3-year command tour, and so I still have just over a year left in the job, and it is wonderful. The absolute, hands-down best job I have had in 25 years of active service.
What are some goals that you had when you came in, and some things that you want to accomplish in the remainder of your assignment?
Yeah. So coming in early on, understood that the biggest challenge here in Fort Meade was literally lack of awareness on the Army staff of the growth that is going on here, because the majority of the growth on Fort Meade is actually above the Army level. It's Department of Defense level growth. We have a large number of Department of Defense agencies and activities that are here, and it's primarily those joint service units that are growing. So I needed to market this place to the Army staff. The Army made the basing decision that Army's cyber 3-star headquarters is going to be going down to Fort Gordon, Georgia. That happened a couple months after I took over. So understandably, the Army turned its attention to Fort Gordon, and I had to make sure the Army understood that they had another fort up here in Maryland that was actually the home of the 4-star U.S. Cyber Command, our Department of Defense senior headquarters for cyber defense, and the National Security Agency and Defense Information Systems Agency, and Marines 3-star cyber headquarters, and the Navy's 3-star cyber headquarters. So we've made huge progress towards that. We've widened the aperture of discussion on the Army staff from growth of Army cyber at Fort Gordon to joint service cyber growth on Army installations, plural. And towards that end now, the Army understands the growth here, and they have been putting outstanding effort towards properly resourcing this place. Most recently towards ensuring that our top 2 military construction projects to widen the gates and roads on Fort Meade, our primary east-west arteries are still 2-lane 50-0 roads. They need to be widened to 4 lanes, and the Army has submitted, ensured that both of those 2 projects were submitted into the fiscal year congressional military construction markup process.
So now it's just seeing that through.
Yeah, so it's now seeing it through, and Senator Mikulski's, of course, there in the Senate, working for us probably today to make sure that the needs of Fort Meade are added into the 2016 President's budget.
One more question. It's interesting that you mentioned Cyber Command, and a lot of the debate in the military right now is the growing cyber threat and the traditional Army boots on the ground, and you have all of that right here.
We've got it all here. We've also changed the understanding of what a power projection platform is. Historically, we in the Army have considered power projection platforms to be locations, the big combat arms forts like a Fort Bragg or a Fort Hood, from where you send materiel and people off into other geographic locations to defend our national interests. Fort Meade is our nation's operational platform. This is an operational platform of 21st century power and defense. Cyberspace knows no geographic boundaries. You don't have to deploy to some other geographic location to defend our national interests in cyberspace. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right here on Fort Meade. A huge number of the people that live and work here are defending our national interests in cyberspace every day.
Well, thank you very much for your service, and thank you for speaking with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about the presence of the military in Maryland and where it stands today.
Well, as someone who's representing all of our veterans on behalf of the Hogan Rutherford administration, of course, any active duty installation, of which we have many, is very important to us because eventually they do transition out upon completion of their service, and we get them hopefully to stay in Maryland. So it's a tremendous opportunity for the department to interact at events such as this, to bring forward our support for not only the department but for the whole state.
I can't let this go without thanking you for your service. Tell us a little bit about your military background.
Well, thank you very much. I was in the Marine Corps 64, 68. Did 3 tours in Vietnam, arrived home safely, and that's all anybody in the family could ask for, including myself.
And there's a lot of similarities and differences between Vietnam and current day, but we talk a lot about how all the troops coming home that have all these injuries and issues related to multiple tours. 3 tours in Vietnam is a lot. These guys are doing 8, 9 tours sometimes.
And that's true, and they are doing many more. There is a big difference, though. The emphasis on what we now know as post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress was not as prevalent as it is today. It's one of the first things that we try to identify when we're dealing with our returning soldiers, airmen, Marines, of course, Navy personnel, Coast Guard. But the wounds today are a little different in that we could get to them much quicker. The golden hour, of course, was created out of Vietnam. If we could get immediate care, even in amputations in the battlefield, we could save them. Today, you can do it even more quickly than you could back then, because there's a blur between the front line and the back line, unlike past wars. So today, I will go so far as to say the degree of wounds are deeper, and they are more severe as far as survivability goes than they were back during the war I was in.
What about working with the Federal Department of Veteran Affairs? There's been so much coverage of the problems they've had. How has that gone so far with you? What in your role?
You hate to see what happened and has happened happen, I guess is the best way to put it. You hope that there are enough good people that will far overshadow all of the ills that we have uncovered in the past. And unfortunately, what was done in the health care side of things was done for very personal gain. And that, I guess, is the most egregious part of all that has happened, that we actually lost veterans. They lost their lives as a result of the waiting, but that was manipulated. And so I would hope that those that are guilty of those manufactured dates and do pay a price for that eventually down the line. But by and large, I am satisfied with the direction that we're going in. I'm happy during my interaction with with VA proper and all that they're doing and all they're trying to do, and I'm especially pleased with our representatives. Senator Mikulski, you couldn't find a better person. Senator Cardin jumped right in, transitioning from the House over to the Senate, and all 8 of our congressional people are to be credited for what they do, and they do it for the right reasons.
I got one more question for you. So if I live around a military post like this, and I want to sort of be a better neighbor or what have you, what are what's some advice you would give to people to understand about the folks who live on the post here?
Well, the first thing they can do certainly is attempt to come into the base, find out what's available, find out what volunteer opportunities are here, because they are innumerable. You can do just about anything, not only for the veteran, but for the veteran's family, for the veteran's children. So that just the opportunities here are just limitless. And if someone is serious about it, they can find many things to contribute in their own lives to help everybody here. I can't let this pass. So I'm looking at these new. They're calling them barracks.
Oh, I know.
But I'm
They're
looking.
beautiful.
I'm looking at them with swimming pools, and this is just tremendous.
Good.
It's a little different.
Least
time.
we can do too,
Yeah,
right?
it is the least. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good talking with you. Tell me a little bit about, this is how many years in Congress now?
Almost 10.
10
10 years,
10.
yeah.
Tell me about how Fort Meade has changed over that period of time.
Oh my goodness. I mean, the growth has been explosive. Of course, Fort Meade benefited tremendously from the BRAC realignment, with a lot of jobs being consolidated here in Maryland and at Fort Meade. And Fort Meade was ready for that challenge, really embraced it. And you see evidence of that everywhere on the base, but you also see evidence of it in the way the surrounding community has kind of stepped up into partnership with Fort Meade. And of course, that's what we're celebrating here today with this community covenant.
You always see cranes.
You always see cranes, and that's always evidence of good progress. I was saying to somebody, it seems like every time I come here, I get lost because I'm disoriented by some new building that's gone up that wasn't there the time before. But it's all good, and it represents a consolidation of function and purpose, along with obviously personnel and assets that I think are very important for the country, strengthening our defenses and our security. Particularly this cyber command is very, very consequential as we move forward, tackling these threats that are coming at us. So Fort Meade has a critical place in the security of our country, and we're proud to have it here in this region.
A lot of people are often kind of disconnected from Congress because the issues there are so large, and they sometimes they connect more with their local officials. But it seems to me like Fort Meade is really where our members of Congress come in on the local level and can make a real impact.
There's no question about that, because we understand the value of Fort Meade to our nation. And so we know that strengthening it here with local partnerships is strengthening the country and strengthening our defense and our security. So I think there is a special place held in the hearts of members of the Maryland delegation for Fort Meade, and working in partnership with other elected officials from around this region to make sure there's always an open, vibrant conversation going on between the base and the surrounding community. That's really important.
And tell us how the covenant works and what the relationship is.
So there are covenants around the country involving other installations, but here at Fort Meade we have this covenant council that's been created. It's sort of a unique thing. And that meets regularly and looks at ways of making sure that conversation and channel of communication between the community and the installation is open and ongoing and productive. And so that's kind of a unique role that's played by what they call the Covenant Council here. And we're very proud of that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that Fort Meade and the communities around Fort Meade here in Maryland would have found a way to do something unique when it comes to this kind of a partnership, and I'm sure we'll continue to strengthen that as we move forward.
Well, thank you for all your work with Fort Meade and for helping push forward the projects that need to get done here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You always talk about critical assets in Arundel County. Where does Fort Meade fit in there?
Fort Meade is at the top of the list. I speak frequently about the important statewide and national assets located in our county, including the Naval Academy, our capital city, BWI, Thurgood Marshall Airport, so many others. But first on the list is Fort George G. Meade, one of the most important military installations in the United States and in the world. This installation is what has made Anne Arundel County the most important center for defense and cyber and intelligence in the United States. Anne Arundel County is at the forefront of keeping our nation safe thanks to the presence of Fort George G. Meade.
And I know you've had a chance over the years and recently to take a tour of Fort Meade. What were some of the things that stood out to you?
I would say the most striking aspects of this facility are its vast size, the breadth of the organizations that are located here. I believe there are over 110 different organizations resident here at Fort Meade, including NSA, the National Security Agency, but many others, DISA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, all the way over to the USO. They're all here at Fort Meade. and we're grateful to have them. There are over 50,000 people employed at Fort Meade, of which over 20,000 are Anne Arundel County citizens.
And so whenever we drive in here, we see cranes, we see buildings going. It doesn't matter what year it is, what's going on. But today, it was striking to drive in and see bulldozers on 175, this new commercial area down here with the restaurants and the commissary, and this housing over here. What do you make of all that?
Our defense infrastructure nationally is changing because our economy and the nature of warfare and conflict are changing. Cyber and intelligence gathering are more important than ever before. Our computers are constantly under attack by those who threaten this nation, and as those threats have grown, so too has the importance of the mission of Fort Meade and NSA. Those organizations are growing very, very rapidly, and as a consequence, Anne Arundel County is growing with it. This organization, this installation, is a major source of economic growth here in western Anne Arundel County, and we have a responsibility to support those organizations in their growth and as they work to achieve their missions. Anne Arundel County plays a very important role in the defense of the nation.
What did you think as you drove in and you saw the work going on 175? I mean, I gotta imagine when you were a delegate, that was a project every single year for I don't know how long, 10 years.
It's great to see that project moving at long last. We've been in a very difficult economic environment for the better part of the last decade. That is changing. Things are starting to move again financially at the state level and at the county level, and we're able to take on some of these projects that have been on the shelf for a long time. These road networks that serve Fort Meade are among them, but also the Route 3 corridor, various bridge projects that have been on hold for a long time, and new initiatives like the efforts that we're making in county government to improve the quality of life here, like more regional parks, bike trails, boat ramps, things that will make it more pleasant to live in this wonderful area of ours.
So, first item today will be Garrison Commander, Fort George G. Meade, Colonel Brian Foley.
We're sitting. Yeah.
Next will be the senior civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army, Mr. Turhan Robinson. Following Mr. Robinson, our Secretary of Maryland Department of Veteran Affairs and also representing Governor Hogan, Mr. George Owings, Secretary Owings. Following Mr. Owings will be Anne Arundel County's Executive, Mr. Steve Schuh. You can just kick my camera guy out of the way. After County Executive Schuh will be Howard County Executive, Mr. Alan H. Kittleman.
I'm signing for you. Okay. There you go.
After County Executive Kittleman will be Mayor of the City of Laurel, Mr. Craig A. Moe. Next, our Senior State Senator, Mr. James E. DeGrange, Maryland District 32. Senator DeGrange, our senior delegate, Ms. Pamela G. Beidle, Maryland District 32. Also from District 32, Delegate Mark Chang. After Delegate Chang, Councilman and Marine from District 1, Peter Smith. From the BWI Business Partnership, Chairman Gene Condon. I forgot him right on the list right here. Congressman, I'm going to put you somewhere in there.
So I can witness
That's good. That's what I thought the whole time. Thank it. Thanks, Linda. We will put them last so we can witness the whole. That's actually a good idea. All right, next. From the Baltimore, Washington Chamber of Commerce, Walt Townsend. After Mr. Townsend, our partners here at Corvius Military Living, Scott Conklin. Next, the new president of the Fort Meade Alliance, Stephen Tiller. From the Howard County Chamber of Commerce, Leonardo McClarty. From the USO of Metropolitan Washington and Baltimore, Missy Lane Rogers.
Wow. Everybody looks so nice.
From the West Anne Arundel County Chamber of Congress, Mrs. Claire Louder. And of course, our chairwoman, Miss Linda Green. And then finally, as planned and dictated by protocol, Congressman John Sarbanes.
I've duly inspected all of the signatures. They're all in order.
Do I put it up on the
All right, let us know when we're good.